Can you train someone to be a nicer person? Well, a recent study using meditation techniques shows that it might be possible. One group of subjects learned to practice what's called compassionate meditation by focusing on a specific person while repeating a phrase like, "May you be free from suffering." The subjects concentrated on 5 different people: a loved one, a friend, themselves, a stranger, and then someone they were in conflict with. Another group of subjects performed general positive thinking. Both groups did the exercise for 30 minutes a day for 2 weeks. Then everyone was asked to spend money to help a fictional character who had been treated unfairly, and the subjects who did compassionate meditation were more likely to spend their money to help than those who trained to just think more positively. The researchers also did brain scans of those who behaved most altruistically before and after training, and people who were most altruistic after training showed the biggest increase in activity in brain areas involved in empathy and positive emotion. So empathy appears to be like a muscle. It can be built up by exercise that causes actual physiological changes.
Back in 1958, at the dawn of the space age, physicist James Van Allen discovered that the Earth is ringed by high-energy charged particles. Held in place by the planet's magnetic field, these bands of radiation were named the inner and outer Van Allen belts. They're of particular interest to NASA as they pose a potential danger to spacecraft. Now a NASA mission also named for Van Allen has found something new about his belts. By looping through them repeatedly, the twin Van Allen probes discovered a third band of radiation, or at least there were 3. The 2 spacecraft uncovered the previously unknown structure in September. It consisted of fast-moving electrons situated between the 2 previously known Van Allen belts. The discovery was reported in the journal Science. But the new structure is no longer. 4 weeks after the probes found it, the third ring was wiped out by a strong shockwave emanating from the sun. Still, the unexpected finding shows that the Van Allen belts are more complex and variable than had been assumed, and that seemingly well-established knowledge about space still may have the capacity to surprise. The search for habitable, Earth-like planets keeps turning up promising candidates, and although astronomers have yet to find an Earth twin, some newly discovered worlds are pretty interesting in their own right. NASA's Kepler Space Telescope recently spotted 7 new exoplanets, 3 of them in or near their star's so-called habitable zones. That's the temperate region where a planet could accommodate liquid water. But all 3 worlds are bigger than Earth, and their composition is uncertain. They could be rocky like Earth, or water worlds without land masses. The discoveries are in the journal Science and in the Astrophysical Journal. The planet Kepler-69c follows a Venus-like orbit around a Sun-like star. Kepler-69c could be habitable, or it could be a bit too hot, depending on how much starlight the planet absorbs. Kepler-62e and 62f are smaller and orbit a star smaller than the Sun. One planet receives about 60% less radiation than warms Earth, and the other gets about 20% more. It's possible that those attributes render Kepler-62e or 62f habitable, but astronomers don't yet know whether they are too cold, too hot, or just right.
Want to remember something? Well, sleep on it. A recent study finds that the more we value a piece of information, the more likely we'll review it during our sleep. And because we do that, we'll tend to remember it. Participants were shown objects with different corresponding dollar amounts on a computer screen. If participants could remember that object later on a test, they were rewarded with the associated dollar amount. Objects were also accompanied by an associated sound. For instance, a cat was accompanied by a... After either a 90-minute nap or wake period, subjects' memory for low-value objects was worse than for high-value objects. But in a second experiment, associated sounds were played either when the subjects were awake or asleep as a way to trigger the memory of the object. Researchers found that low-value objects were better remembered when the associated sound was played during the subject's sleep as opposed to when they were awake. The authors believe that during sleep is when we tend to go over the day's new information. So that is why they could manipulate the memory storage of lower value objects during sleep time rather than wake time. Gives new meaning to the term sound asleep.
Good cup of coffee can get you out of bed in the morning, but for heart patients, coffee is often on the list of things to avoid. The American Heart Association advises that it might increase the risk of heart failure, but a new report suggests that moderate coffee drinking could actually lower the odds of heart failure. The findings are in the journal Circulation. Researchers pored through 5 studies that followed more than 140,000 European adults and included information about coffee intake. People who drank about 16 ounces of coffee a day, a grande in Starbucks speak, had about an 11% reduction of the risk of heart failure. People who drink coffee also seem to have less type 2 diabetes, another risk factor for heart disease. But that doesn't mean it's time to start ordering the venti. In the studies, people who consumed more than 40 ounces a day were at an increased risk for heart failure. More research should filter out the best info, which will percolate down to the public.